Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Spurs Up Show. This is episode 32. We are back after a long hiatus. We are back talking about the Gamecocks. Got a packed show for you guys today. Going to be obviously talking about the Outback Bowl coming up on New Year's Day. Also, some recruiting news to go through, as well as a little bit of basketball and other Gamecock tidbits as well. So I'm going to go get into all that. Before we do, as always, make sure you follow us on iTunes at the Spurs Up Show. Be sure to go there, rate, subscribe, tell us you like, tell us you don't like about the show. We appreciate all the feedback as always. Be sure to go follow us on Twitter at ArmchairSCAR. That's going to be at ArmchairSCAR. All of your latest breaking game news coverage there on our Twitter account. Also, be sure to check us out on Instagram at Armchair S Carolina for all of our posts there. And of course, this is a podcast brought to you by the Armchair All Americans, armchairallamericans.com, localizing your sports coverage content. Be sure to go to armchairallamericans.com for all your latest breaking Gamecock news, the podcast, of course, and all of our other sports coverage there. So, like I said, I'm Chris Phillips. I'm joined as always by my colleague Tyler Clark. And like I said, it's been a while, Tyler. We haven't been on. In about a month, just before the Clemson game, there were some technical difficulties we had to go through with myself. Had some things I kind of had to shift around, get a new laptop. But we are finally back just in time to preview the Gamecocks matchup against Michigan in the Outback Bowl. Before we get anything, Tyler, ask how you been? How's everything been? I guess we've gone through Thanksgiving, Christmas now. So how's your holiday season been? And was Santa good to you this year?
Santa was good to me. Been busy. This last month has been absolutely crazy. We've gone from holidays, just normal life stuff. We've gone through Clemson game. We've gone through bowl season. We've gone through a weird early recruiting season, which is super weird, and I never got used to it. A lot of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of where we're going to start off first with the early recruiting cycle, like you said. Kind of a different feel this year, but really had the same kind of feel as National Signing Day. I mean, it was the same type of hype around, and really, I think most guys signed for pretty much every school. I mean, South Carolina had 20 signees. I know, a lot of schools now are trying to get as many signees in as they can, early on. But yeah, I think it was a pretty productive day for the Gamecocks. Had 20 signees overall, I believe was the tally. They've got room for about 4 or 5 more guys. Obviously, they have a couple more commitments they're looking to sign in February. But, just talking a little bit, Tyler, I thought some of the highlights, obviously the big flip the Gamecocks got from 3-star outside linebacker Rosendo Lewis from Florida State. I believe he's an Under Armour All-American, him and also center Hank Manos that South Carolina signed as well. But getting Rosendo Lewis to flip from Florida State, that was a guy they were heavily on. A guy I know that Will Muschamp wanted, kind of one of his guys. He said that, is really going to fit in on his defense. Definitely the Jimbo Fisher saga with him leaving definitely helped South Carolina in that respect. And then also getting, what I thought was sort of a surprise signing from offensive lineman Jovan Gwynn, 6'3", 290 out of Charlotte, North Carolina. A really athletic offensive lineman. Should be a guy that's going to provide a lot of depth at offensive line. Tyler, obviously you wrote the kind of the recruiting recap article. Talk about kind of your thoughts on signing day, and were there any surprises or any just kind of your impressions of what you thought of the early signing period?
Like you said, Jovan Gwynn was interesting because going into Will Muschamp's press conference, you could count the guys that had already signed and that were official, and there were 19. And then at the beginning of his conference, he said 20. So you're sitting there just kind of a mystery. You're like, who's the 20th guy? And you have no idea. And he just randomly goes, Jovan Gwynn. And so you have literally no clue. It was pretty cool. I didn't know a whole lot about him. You go look him up, and holy crap, he's just a huge, physical, strong, freak athlete kid. That's going to be interesting to look. I think he was down to South Carolina and North Carolina State. A lot of guys were, it seemed like, from this class. But the class it's just different, it seems, from last year, I think in a good way. Because it seems like they were there for the whole cycle, through the recruiting cycle. So they were able to, go through and get guys that they really wanted or that weren't already, not committed, but, just looking at one school or two schools and it's already too late to flip them. So in that aspect, you can see just from the 2 years press conferences, the guys that he likes so much more out of this class than I think he did last year.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I definitely think the benefit, or at least this year, the benefit for South Carolina in the early signing period was, the ability to flip due to coaching changes. They said that the early signing period, it's a great thing unless you're going through a coaching change. And obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty around the program. I think you saw that with Florida State, for sure, with Willie Taggart coming in. But yeah, South Carolina really, reap the benefits with getting a guy like a Rosendo Lewis. And, because I think if that one goes to February, they might actually have the ability to kind of sway him and keep him committed. But, it worked out for the Gamecocks' favor. Just going through really briefly the signees, you've got Josh Vann, a speedster wide receiver we talked about over the summer. Should be a guy I think that's going to make an immediate impact. Like you wrote, he picked Gamecocks over Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, Florida, Michigan. So, a ton of big names there. DeCarrion Joyner, the 4-star quarterback out of North Charleston, should be a guy that comes in and battles for the next couple of years for the quarterback spot. J.C. Horn, that was a huge signing, I thought, as well. Should be a guy that has a chance to play immediately, sort of like Jam Williams did. Really, really big. Also, the son of Joe Horn. I really didn't plug that together until actual signing day came, but the son of Joe Horn, so NFL ties. Israel Mukuamu, the safety out of Louisiana originally. Grew up in South Carolina, but out of Louisiana. Really big pickup. He's a 6'5" safety, which is very, very interesting.
That's gonna be awesome.
Another flip to Florida State. Yeah, it's just crazy. His size. That's the thing I think that, like you wrote, really just jumps off the page for the Gamecocks. Should make a really big impact in that secondary as well. I think that's something they really focused on this recruiting cycle was the secondary. I mean, you lose Jamarcus King, Chris Lamons. You don't know if Rashad Fenton's really coming back, even though I think he should. DJ Smith's gone as well. So, definitely focus on the secondary. Jonathan Gibson, another cornerback. Again, we already talked about Rosendo Lewis. Kingsley, and let me say his last name, Kingsley Nagbar. I guess that's how you say his last name.
Close
really
enough.
Good defensive end out of Atlanta. 6'4", 257. Should be a guy that comes in again. I think the big theme with these guys, especially on defense, is, hey, you're going to have a chance to play early. I mean, that's South Carolina's biggest selling point right now, I think, until, they develop the depth they're looking to build. We talked about Jovan Gwynn, Maxwell Yama, another kind of underrated offensive lineman. I thought 6'3", 305 6'5", 305, excuse me. Should provide, again, much needed depth. Deshaun Fenwick, running back out of Bradenton, Florida. I heard the staff was really high on him. Great pickup at running back there. Again, Hank Manos, ranked the 8th best center in the country. I've heard, from other sources that the Gamecocks think of him as the best center in the country. 6'5", 270, was in the Shrine Bowl, Under Armour All-American. With Allen not graduating, kind of like you wrote, Tyler, he's going to have a chance to play early and often. Levante Valentine, 10'4", 100-yard dash in the state of Florida. Definitely a guy that, seems like the kind of guy that, if he gets the ball in open space, should be able to take it the distance, which is something that I don't think South Carolina's had maybe since Ace Sanders. I mean, it's been a while since
That's what it feels like.
Yeah, with that kind of breakaway speed. So should be very interesting to see how he can fit in. Tyquan Johnson, kind of a guy I thought that flew under the radar, wide receiver. I think he's about 6'4". Should provide some good size on the outside for South Carolina. Jabari Ellis, D tackle out of Georgia Military College. Definitely a guy that I know that Will Muschamp had on his radar and had, like you said, had on his want list since his senior year at Lake Marion High School. 6'2", 280. Jesus Gibbs, offensive tackle, another good O-lineman pickup for the Gamecocks. Ernest Jones, outside linebacker. Good pickup there as well, providing depth, at the linebacker position, obviously with losing Sky Moore this season. And then you have Wyatt Campbell, another good offensive line pickup. A guy that, Eric Wolford was really high on. He chose the Gamecocks over Virginia Tech. So a pretty highly regarded player there. R.J. Roderick was another guy I was really high on too, the safety. Another big dude, kind of like Israel Mukuamu. Not quite that tall, but should be a guy that comes in and has a chance to play immediately. And then you look at guys like Darius Rush, the wide receiver. Another guy, kind of a speedster, if you will, kind of a do-it-all guy. He was a quarterback, running back, and wide receiver, defensive back, and a kick returner in high school. So, definitely a guy that's very athletic, has the ability to play multiple positions. Be interesting to see how he's going to fit in. And then finally, you've got Tyreek Johnson, the defensive end. So, he was initially part of the 2017 recruiting class, but he tore his labrum, was forced out of season. Definitely had a great year. Should be very interesting to see how he fits in as well. So, and obviously, like we said, the Gamecocks should have 4 or 5 more guys signed in February. I think kind of the headline of that group right now is going to be Bryce Thompson, the kid out of Dutch Fork, who had a huge Shrine Bowl game. But I know they're really high on. I know that I believe it was Steve Tannehill said he thought he was the best, or maybe it was the head coach at Dutch Fork, said he thought he was the best player he ever coached.
Yeah, it was.
He won.
That's an impressive statement there.
Yeah,
I watched
absolutely.
him play the state championship game at Williams-Brice, and that was one of the best performances I've ever seen. Just from a talent standpoint. But I think he had an even bigger Shrine Bowl than the state championship game.
Yeah, he had in the Shrine Bowl, I saw he had 3 catches for 140 yards and 2 touchdowns in the first half.
He's that kind of guy.
From what I've heard, everyone's been ranting and raving on him, talking about how good he is. So, I mean, it's, definitely a good sign there. And then obviously the Gamecocks are hoping to steal a couple of guys. You're talking about Dorian Gerald, a couple other defensive line commits that for some reason are escaping my mind right now. Definitely going to be a chance to fill this class out, make it a pretty nice recruiting class. I think the Gamecocks are around 17th or 18th right now. I think if you can, really if you stay there in the top 20, but especially if you can get the top 15, I think it'd be a great recruiting class for Will Muschamp and, just providing the program more positive momentum moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It'll be interesting to see who that, because it seems like they only have room for one more guy. It'll be interesting to see how they work that for the next couple months. I would assume they already have their guy and they're just waiting on a commitment. I just don't know what to expect from that other guy, whether it's going to be a surprise or not. But we'll see in February.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, overall, I took a poll on Twitter. How would you grade the Gamecocks recruiting class at this point? I think it was about 70% rated as a B, which I think is a really fair, a fair ranking. I mean, like I said, you're a team still coming off 2 years ago, a 3-9 record, and you're able to recruit at this level. And people forget, even when South Carolina was winning 11 games every year, I mean, they didn't have top 5, even really top 10 recruiting classes. It was just solid top 15, top 20 classes, and they were able to coach those guys up because, I mean, as we all know, stars are great and everything. I mean, they don't mean everything. Just because you're a 4-star or a 5-star doesn't mean you're going to pan out. And there's been plenty of South Carolina players that have gone on to the NFL or had great careers as Gamecocks that were 2-star and 3-star recruits. So, but yeah, I mean, I think overall you got to be pleased as a Gamecock fan. I mean, they definitely addressed a lot of needs on defense. I felt like it was a pretty heavily defense recruiting class, if you will, but still picked up some key pieces on offense. I look again at a guy like Josh Vann, who I think is a guy that probably has the best chance to come in and make an immediate impact for sure. And then again, to Carry-On Joyner, I don't expect him to play next year. I still think it'll be Jake Bentley's team, but should definitely be a guy who pushes Jake Bentley at least, in the offseason. The great thing about this is, like we mentioned, these guys are going to be coming in. A lot of them are going to be enrolling in January and going to be taking part in spring practice and everything. So that is the huge benefit of the early recruiting cycle. And I think it's going to put even more emphasis on kind of freshmen playing early. I mean, when you've had that, full off-season workout and spring practice, you're able to learn the playbook. It's going to help guys get in much quicker. So, should be interesting to see what happens come 2018. So, with that being said, we're going to jump into it with the Outback Bowl. The Gamecocks take on Michigan on Monday, New Year's Day, the first game of a loaded New Year's Day schedule. Noon Eastern kickoff in Tampa, Florida at Raymond James Stadium. The game's on ESPN2. Right now, Michigan sits as a 7.5-point favorite. Over-unders at 43, most expecting a pretty low-scoring game. Overall, the teams have only met 3 times. South Carolina does lead the series 2-1. And the last meeting, Tyler, obviously, I think we all remember the hit with Jadeveon Clowney, the questionable, putting it nicely, questionable measurement on 4th down in which the ref said that, Michigan got it. And obviously the next play, we all know what happened with the hit, which was made infamous and is something you'll probably see replayed 100 times before South Carolina and Michigan play each other. Well, people forget about that game, though. South Carolina won that game 33-28. Last-second touchdown pass by Dylan Thompson came in and hit hit Bruce Ellington on kind of like a 4 verticals, if you will, and Bruce got kind of in between the safety and linebacker, made the catch, and it was just a great win for South Carolina. So Michigan, coached by, of course, Jim Harbaugh, they went 8-4 this year with a 5-4 conference record. Definitely didn't meet up the expectations they were obviously looking for, but sort of a disappointing year. Another loss to Ohio State. Before we get into breaking everything down, Tyler, talk about kind of your initial reactions to finding out the Gamecocks are going to the Outback Bowl again, and sort of your initial your feelings going into this game facing a pretty talented Michigan team.
I definitely love the Outback Bowl. It was interesting to see some people on Twitter didn't want to go back to the Outback Bowl. I mean, I think it's an awesome bowl game. I think the Gamecocks have done pretty well in the Outback Bowl in their history. Playing Michigan is awesome too. Even more people didn't like that. But I feel like if you're going to match it up, I feel like Michigan's a team that, is similar to the style of South Carolina, where your offense kind of sucks, but you make your living on defense. So it'll be that kind of game. Normally this year when we've had, point spreads, we've tended to disagree or on the total mostly, but I think the total's about right this game. I really think this game's going to be just awful to watch and just, brutal and boring, which I look forward to. I like that. I like those kind of games. But this one's going to be interesting, and it gives you a chance to go against one of the best coaches in all of football, not just college football. So you have that going for you. You'll have, everyone's going to be watching this game because it'll be, the start to one of probably the best day in college football history. I feel like that's a fair assumption. Monday is going to be awesome. And luckily we get out of the way first and we get to watch all the games later on.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's going to be a great day. Obviously, the playoff gets going that day as well. You've got the, I believe the Peach Bowl's that day with Auburn and UCF is like 30 minutes after South Carolina's kickoff. So it's going to be a fun day. But I agree with you. I think the total's, pretty much right on. I think it's going to be that kind of game. I don't see this being kind of one of those games where it's a surprisingly high-scoring game. I just can't really envision that right now. But, yeah, I definitely think, hey, the Outback Bowl, South Carolina's obviously been there a ton, but there's nothing wrong going to the Outback Bowl. There's no shame in that, especially in Will Muschamp's second year. We're recording this live right now on December the 29th. The Belk Bowl is about to take place right outside my apartment, and it's 30 degrees in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I think Gamecock fans, a lot worse. You could be playing in frigid, cold weather. South Carolina is going to get some good weather down in Tampa, Florida. It's probably going to be in probably the 60s or 70s, I imagine, on the low side. So, count your blessings on that end. But yeah, definitely awesome when you can take on, the winningest program in college football history. I just definitely think, especially on that day, like you said, New Year's Day is going to be a day where everyone's going to be watching college football. And for South Carolina to kind of get out there, obviously against one of the winningest program and get that exposure does nothing but positive things, especially if you can find a way to pull off the win. So moving into it, like I mentioned, I think South Carolina, I think we can all agree, Tyler, South Carolina had a year in which, was really above expectations. It was ugly at times. It was hard to watch at times, but the Gamecocks got it done for an 8-4 record, 5-3 in the conference. First time they've had a winning record in the SEC since 2013. First time they've had, anywhere near 8 wins. In Michigan, in contrast, I think their year was definitely below expectations. I don't really remember where they were preseason ranked, but they started off the year with a miserable game against Florida. Wilton Speight threw 2 interceptions that were returned for touchdowns. They lost that game and sort of, kind of deflated all the preseason hype they had received. And, Jim Harbaugh definitely was leading that hype train with his, crazy antics in the offseason. But, it's been definitely a contrast, definitely a different feeling between the two fan bases. I'll ask you, Tyler, because I definitely think it's a talking point, especially in these bowl games where, you don't really know who, which team's really going to come ready to play, who's not. Do you think that, do you think South Carolina will come more motivated and more ready to play than Michigan due to, per se, this being, a victory for South Carolina is just going to put, the icing on the cake for South Carolina's season, really, whereas Michigan, maybe it's not a bowl game they necessarily want to be in. Do you think that factors in at all in the game Monday?
First, kind of have to correct you here. Michigan won that game by 16 against Florida.
That's right. They did win
Yeah,
that.
but it was awful, and there was no way Florida should have been that close because it wasn't that close for. I mean, it was really close for most of that game. But I don't think Michigan could come in here or not come in here, but go into the Outback Bowl not ready to play because of who their coach is. I think Jim Harbaugh has this kind of pride about himself and pride about his team where he would never let anything like that happen because he doesn't want to put up with what comes with it afterwards. But I think, a lot of other teams in the same position would be, not ready or just not want to play. But this one specifically, I think, is a different situation just because of Harbaugh.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you in that sense. I definitely think Harbaugh and Will Muschamp definitely have some parallels, and I think they're both kind of guys that will have their teams ready to play. But it is an interesting talking point. I don't know. I mean, I think definitely because of Harbaugh, they're going to have to be ready to play. He's going to get them into gear, but it'll be interesting to see how fired up they really come out. Obviously, some of the big news that we hadn't talked about yet, but is definitely worth noting: the Gamecocks fired Kurt Roper. To our satisfaction and to most of Gamecock Nation's satisfaction, Kurt Roper was relieved of his duties weeks ago, beginning of the month, if you will. Brian McClendon has taken over the offensive coordinator position, the play calling duties, if you will, for the time being. Will Muschamp's kind of calling in an extended interview, if you will. Bobby Bentley is coaching quarterbacks. You've got, I believe, Brian McClendon, I think, is still working wide receivers. I think Pat Washington had moved to coaching running backs. But either way, Brian McClendon has taken over the offensive coordinator reins. I mean, obviously, Will Muschamp decided a lack of production, that he wants to move a lot faster. They just weren't productive enough under Roper, which I know that we all agree with. Tyler, I'm really interested to see how those changes are going to affect, the game plan against Michigan, just because of the sense that, South Carolina try to move a lot faster. I expect to see some creative wrinkles. I don't expect to see, Hayden Hurst come in motion for the same exact run play every single time to run it up the middle as we saw all season. But I'm not sure how much we're really going to be able to take away from, Brian McClendon's play calling or the revamped offense because of the talented Michigan defense. I mean, it's definitely their best unit. I'm really interested to see kind of how South Carolina matches up with them.
Yeah, I really like that Brian McClendon's going to be the interim guy. I just feel like his history really sets up possibly being, promoted to offensive coordinator next year. I don't know how much could change just from a bowl season, how many plays you could change, but I think the in-game adjustments are going to be different, and I think that they can notice a lot of things differently. I guess that that Kurt Roper did, and it just didn't want to change during a game. Muschamp did say that McClendon's going to be in the press box, which I like. Not the press box, but up top. I really like that. But for more future reference, if he is promoted, I feel like you're getting a guy that can really recruit the guys he wants and get whoever he wants. Because if you go to his recruiting profile on 247 Sports, these are his top 6 recruits that he's gotten: Isaiah Crowell, Keith Marshall, Sony Michel, Nick Chubb, Todd Gurley, Jamice Williams. It's pretty insane.
He did pretty good work for Georgia, safe to say.
Yeah, so I feel like you're getting a guy that has a lot of respect around the country, pretty much, or with any kind of offensive guys that he wants. So I feel like if he puts up a decent showing here, and there are really no other openings that Muschamp wants, I feel like he'd be a great fit for full-time offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I don't know how much this game is going to play into does McClendon get the job, or do they go outside?
0%.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I just think, I like McClendon. I definitely, like you said, he definitely has the pedigree. And I think no matter what happens, he's going to stay on staff and be still like a vital part of the staff for sure. I think with a hire this important, I think they may look outside the program just because, as everyone knows, and of course Will Muschamp knows, this is going to be kind of his career-defining hire, I think. I mean, it really is. I mean, he's, we all know the history of Muschamp, his teams, their lack of ability to score on offense. I just think this hire is going to be kind of the one that, okay, if you get this one right, versus if you get this one wrong, it's really going to tell the tale of probably his coaching career, if you will. But yeah, I'm really interested to see what they're going to do. Like I said, Michigan has got an extremely talented defense. It's the best unit on their team for sure. I think they're like third in the country in overall defense. They've got a lot of big athletes up there. South Carolina's definitely going to be creative in the run game. I mean, they did show some vulnerability against the run in their last 3 games. I think it was Michigan State, Wisconsin, and Ohio State were able to really run all over them. So Tyler, I'm really interested to just kind of see the creativity in the run game. Rico Dowdle was thought to be back. I think he's still going to be out. Will Muschamp said they don't really expect him to play, but you get AJ Turner back. You've got Tyson Williams. You got Mon Denson. I'm going to be really interested to see how Brian McClendon is able to use those guys. And, obviously, like I said, just be creative in the running game. I think that was the biggest fault of Kurt Roper was just the predictability that lingered with him. So I think if you can get some creativity in the run game, I definitely think the Michigan showed they can be run on. It's going to be up to the guys up front, obviously, with Corey Helms, Zach Bailey, Alan Knott, those guys to open the holes, pave the way. But, I definitely think we're going to see a lot more like jet sweep type stuff. I even heard from a source that the Gamecocks are practicing the speed option in practice down in Tampa. So definitely something we didn't see all year. You might see a little bit more of Jake Bentley running as well, kind of trying to keep him off balance. So, it'll be interesting to see kind of the play calling and how South Carolina tries to attack that talented defensive line. Looking at Michigan, Tyler, they had their own troubles on offense, especially at quarterback for sure. They went through Wilton Spate. John O'Korn also came in as well. Now they're on their third quarterback, Brandon Peters, who played 4 games earlier in the year. Was able to do some okay things for him. He only threw for about 460 yards. I mean, he wasn't asked to do a whole lot. Really leaned on the running game. Obviously South Carolina's defense has bailed them out of a lot of bad situations this year, has won a lot of games for them, let's be honest. I mean, South Carolina scored 17 points or less in, half their games this year. And the defense has really rose to the challenge. I guess the question to you is, Tyler, do you think the defense has one more big game in them? And, do you think that the defense can pull out a performance where they can carry this team to victory on Monday?
Oh, absolutely. Because if you go watch any of Michigan's game, I will say I don't know that much about Michigan at all, but I've watched them play maybe 3 times this year. Every single time I've watched them, they've had just horrendous quarterback play where they throw picks at the 1-yard line, just anywhere on the field. Anytime they need a pass, I feel like, opposing defenses, all they have to do is just blitz, and the quarterbacks just freak out. So, yeah, as long as you stop the run, I feel like there's 0 threat vertically in this game. So if you could stop the run, I feel like South Carolina's faced a lot more rushing attacks that I was more afraid of than Michigan's. So I feel like the defense is going to hold their own extremely well in this game, and I think it'll be more up to the offense because, I mean, I don't know how many scores it's going to take to beat Michigan, but I don't think it's going to be a lot. And I feel like it's the same way the other way around.
Yeah, I think this is one of those games where if you can, for either side, if you can get out to a 10-0, 14-0 lead, I mean, it might be almost too much to overcome. I mean, like you said, I think 21 might be enough to win this game. I mean, for either side. So, it should be interesting. Like I said, most people are expecting a low-scoring game, close game. That's reflected in the over-under being at 43. I will say, Tyler, the one thing that does kind of scare me, have to bring it up, is the kicking game.
Yeah.
Trying to make a kick in a clutch situation. I mean, struggles obviously throughout the year. I think one of the big keys, like we talk about, pretty much every game, but especially this one, is going to be when you get in the red zone, are you able to convert touchdowns instead of field goals? I mean, I just don't think this is a game where you want to get into a field goal battle, if you will. I'm not really familiar with Michigan's kicking situation, but I can't imagine that it's much worse than South Carolina's. So, it should be interesting to see how Muschamp handles that. I mean, I think in a bowl game, especially, if you're at the 30-yard line, I think it's just a situation you just kind of have to go for it. If you got less than 4th and 5, I mean, I just think that why not? Roll the dice. I mean, I don't know how much you can rely on the foot of Parker White all day. So it'll be interesting to see how they attack that. So we're going to move into some key matchups, Tyler. I'll go ahead and start with my first one. I got USC linebacker Sky Moore against Michigan quarterback Brandon Peters. Definitely think this is a huge matchup as far as Peters being the young quarterback, young signal caller, I know he's a guy that's been highly regarded by Michigan fans, has been a guy they wanted in there. Really big kid, 6'5", 220. Like I said, played in 4 games, really limited action. He went out against Wisconsin with a concussion, which caused him to miss the Ohio State game. But he's back for this one. But Sky Moore comes in this game, as we all know, tied for the South Carolina record, 14 interceptions. One more would set the record for him. I definitely think it's going to be a game where he's going to have an opportunity to record and have an impact in his last game in Garnet and Black.
Yeah, so I'm looking at your list right here, and I think I would go the exact same 3. So I'll let you finish it out here.
Yeah. So my second one, I've got the South Carolina running backs, and you could really plug an offensive line here as well. But South Carolina running backs against Michigan defensive tackle Rashawn Gary. Rashawn Gary's a guy, really big presence in the middle, definitely a run stopper for the Wolverines. Just one of the many options they have up front that can, that can plug the middle for sure. But like we said, Michigan has been exposed in the running game. I think it's going to take a little bit of creativity, a little creative play calling to kind of get those running lanes open, get Michigan kind of off balance, probably throw in some motion. It's going to be probably collective effort. A.J. Turner, Tyson Williams, Mon Denson. Finding the guy with the hot hand is something that hopefully South Carolina will be able to do with McClendon calling the shots. So, Rashawn Gary, again, a guy that should be, probably a pretty high draft pick, when he does declare. So, be very interesting to see that matchup. And then finally, I've got South Carolina defensive tackle Taylor Stallworth against Michigan running back Karan Higdon. Higdon, a guy who's just under 1,000 yards rushing on the season. Taylor Stallworth, again, in his last game in Garnet and Black as a senior. Definitely just going to be a huge matchup. And it leads me into why it's such a huge matchup. And one of my keys to the game, stopping the run. The Gamecocks, Tyler, I just learned this the other day, and I was shocked when I heard it. The Gamecocks are 8-0 when they hold their opponents to under 184 rush yards, which 184 rush yards seems like a pretty good bit. And you'd feel like South Carolina should have a good chance to do that today, but you think about the game South Carolina lost. Clemson ran for way more than 184. Georgia, way more. Texas A&M had a good day on the ground. And then, oh, God, who's
Kentucky.
The fourth one? Kentucky. They had a huge day. Benny Snell had a huge day as well. So, I mean, it's just going to be a huge game. And, we talk about it a lot, but stopping the run and being able to run the football is key. Taylor Stallworth is going to need to have a big day against Karan Higdon, plugging those running holes up the middle, kind of blowing plays up and also getting in the face of Brandon Peters as well. But it's going to be really vital for South Carolina to, have a big day up front. Those seniors, again, Stallworth, Ulrich Jones, Dante Sawyer, also mixing in Javon Kinlaw, Kobe Smith. So going to be key for those.
Chris, if you can hear me, I can't hear you at all. It's not registering that you're talking. Nothing. Can you hear me? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Oh, something came through.
Technical difficulties there. I do apologize. Not sure what just happened. But, yeah, I'm not sure where we cut out. But, yeah, we'll go back to the keys of the game. So, like I said, Tyler, just stopping the run, the new look on offense for South Carolina, and then winning the turnover battle, I think, are the three, in my opinion, for South Carolina to win this game, be Outback Bowl champions again.
Yeah, turnover battle, I feel like the one. I feel like one to two turnovers can lose this game in a heartbeat. I think, yeah, whoever wins turnover battle wins the game 10,000,000%, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. And I wasn't sure if you heard the stat I said earlier, but I think definitely stopping the run's a huge one, especially, Michigan's got the young quarterback in Brandon Peters. So I think they're going to rely pretty heavily on the run game. South Carolina, though, 8-0 when they hold their opponents under 84 yards rush.
Yeah,
pretty crazy stat.
That's pretty cool.
It's insane. And then, again, the new look on offense, I think this is a game where if you get the 21 points, might do enough to win it. So being able to be creative, play fast, play efficiently, and just kind of keep Michigan on their toes. I mean, when you have a defense this good, you're not going to be able to just line up and tell them what's coming and beat them. I think you're going to have to be creative, get a little innovative, and that's something that I'm sure Brian McClendon and those guys are preaching in bowl prep. So should be pretty interesting. With that being said, we're going to move right into the predictions. Tyler, make our predictions for the Outback Bowl first and start it. Who wins the Outback Bowl? On Monday, who takes home the trophy?
All right, so I think there are going to be some field goals involved somehow in this game, whether they're chip shots or they just don't want to kick it, go for it inside like a goal line situation. Because I feel like Michigan's goal line defense or red zone defense is going to be just through the roof. So there are going to be some field goals. I think there's going to be a late touchdown somehow from South Carolina to come through, 20-13. Killing the under, just smoking it, covering the under.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. I like that a lot. Definitely, I think a lot of people are going to be taking the under for sure. So yeah, I released my preview today. I think this is a really interesting game. Like I said, I agree with you what you said earlier that it's a good matchup for South Carolina. I think it's the best Big Ten team they could have drawn. Teams that are really similar. I take a look at this game. I take a look at Michigan, look at South Carolina. I think there's definitely a lot of unknowns for South Carolina on the offensive side of the football. They definitely got the playmakers to get it done. However, I'm kind of wait and see mode with Brian McClendon and kind of what he's been able to establish and, install in a really short span. I do expect South Carolina's defense to have a really good day against Brandon Peters. Again, I think it's going to be kind of a slugfest. I don't know how many field goals are going to be involved. I think there's going to have to be a couple, but I think it's a game that is going to come down to the wire. However, I've got Michigan just edging out South Carolina 20-17. I'm just kind of in a wait and see mode with the offense. Need to see something out of them. I think it's a game where I think it's literally a flip of a coin. I think both teams have a great shot. Again, Michigan's a 7.5 point favorite, so make of that what you will, but the one matchup I don't like in this game is South Carolina's offensive line against Michigan's D-line. I think it'll be really interesting to see how they match up. I really don't like the matchup a whole lot, but we'll see. But I've got the Michigan Wolverines beating South Carolina 20-17. I definitely don't want to understate the importance of this game too, though. I think a win for South Carolina would be absolutely huge and just continuing that momentum, and I think it would lead to some pretty big expectations for 2018 as well. So we'll see what happens. Again, the teams square off noon on Monday in the Outback Bowl. Should be a lot of fun. A start to a, action-packed New Year's Day for sure. We'll all be watching. So as always, we do have some listener questions. Tyler, we're going to start from Twitter at ArmchairFSU, our Florida State Armchair account. They asked over/under on the amount of combined turnovers. I'm guessing they're asking how many turnovers do we think there'll be combined. I think the number will be fairly low. I'm saying I'd put the over/under about 2.5. I think that's a fair number. But South Carolina, again, they've been pretty good at not turning the football over. Michigan, I don't know they're going to let Brandon Peters really put it in harm's way. I mean, you hope so. I'd love to see that. I think if you get Michigan in 3rd and longs, you can force them to throw the football. But, yeah, I'd put it at like 2.5. I'd be really surprised if this was, a lot of turnovers in this game.
I think Michigan is going to get to a point, and South Carolina. I think South Carolina's going to throw the ball a lot in this game. But they're going to throw the ball. They're going to have to. There hasn't been many teams that South Carolina's played where they just haven't thrown the ball. We thought Georgia was just going to pound it the entire game. They did not, and Jake Fromm beat us with his arm. But I don't think Michigan's quarterback can beat South Carolina with his arm. So I think he's going to throw a pick or two. Sky Moore's going to break the all-time interception record, by the way. Forgot to add that in my prediction. Yeah, but I think 2.5 is a good number for turnovers. I'd go 2 with Michigan, 1 at South Carolina.
Yeah, there's nothing more I'd love to see than Sky Moore seal the game with an interception and break the break the record for sure. I think they're going to do, I know he's going to do everything he can to obviously break that record. Another question from Twitter, another armchair account asks us, Armchair Ole Miss, a couple of funny questions, I guess. Will there be any knocking off of helmets? Can you design a play where you throw a pass out of bounds that hits Harbaugh, and will there be more than 30 combined points? I don't know if there will be the hit two. I don't know. There's not a Jadeveon Clowney on the field, so my gut tells me no, there won't be. Can you design a play where you throw a pass out of bounds that hits Harbaugh? I'm sure everyone would love that. However, I highly doubt it. But you never know with Jake Bentley. I think he might just do that on accident, to be honest. I don't know if you really even need to design that, if you will. But will there be more than 30 combined points? I'm going to say yes. I don't think it'll be that low scoring. I think, like I said, 20-17, 20-13 type game for sure. I don't think it'll be quite that low scoring. It'll go under 30. So we'll move to the next question from Reddit at Apocalyptic Spock. Who would be your ideal hire for OC? Is Mark Helfrich even a possibility? Tyler, I'll let you start. Do you have any guys that would be ideal, in your mind that you've thought of? Or
I don't know ideal. I've seen a lot about UCLA's offensive coordinator, who I think spent some time with the Jaguars in the NFL. Toledo's, I can't remember his name. I know his last name's Clark because we share a name. But that kind of goes out the window when they lost 34-0 in their bowl game to Appalachian State. So I don't know how much South Carolina's going to still be looking at him. I saw yesterday Matt Canada said that he wasn't going to return to LSU. I've seen a lot of interest there, but I just don't see that. No, he has a lot of the motion, slow type offenses. I don't know if he was slow at Pittsburgh, but it just doesn't seem like it's a fit at South Carolina because I feel like he wants to get the ball going and move it down the field. So I don't know how much weight will be put on Matt Canada. It'd be a good hire, but I don't think it's the right fit. So we'll just wait and see. I wouldn't be mad at Brian McClendon, but I can't say that right now without having watched him coach a game. I'm not saying that this game has any leeway or it's like an audition, but you got to see something. Something's got to happen. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it'll have a huge impact, but I definitely think if South Carolina comes out and scores 35 points and has 450 yards of offense, I definitely think he's going to vaunt himself up there to almost where you can't say no to the guy. With me, I don't really have an ideal name. Like you said, there's been a ton of names thrown around. I'm just more so focused on get a guy into South Carolina that's going to spread the offense out, run fast tempo, a guy that's going to run kind of a modern offense. I don't really care who the guy is per se. I mean, you obviously like someone with a track record of successful offenses, but I think it's more so get the guy in who's going to bring in the right scheme. I think that's even almost more important than who the actual person is. So, it'll be interesting. I mean, we won't know the offensive coordinator hire until after the bowl game. Obviously, I'm sure, I know Muschamp has had conversations. I've heard the NC State offensive coordinator as well, which I don't know how much that really plugs into what South Carolina does either. I mean, I don't know if they're really a tempo team. I remember when South Carolina played them in Charlotte, I thought they were kind of more of a, play action type offense.
I feel like they were pretty, similar to South Carolina.
Really quick. I mean, I'll get, and they did have a pretty good day against South Carolina. I'm not going to lie to you. they had a pretty good day. But I don't know. I don't really care what the name is. I care more about the scheme they bring with them. So it'll be interesting. Next question from Reddit. This comes from Wemmy Wom Wom Wobble. Would it be wise for Muschamp to take a pay cut and have coordinators at offensive play calling and quarterback rather than have one position that covers both? I'll take this one. I really don't want Muschamp to take a pay cut. I mean, he's already like the 7th highest paid head coach in the conference. So, I mean, South Carolina has the money to give him what they're giving him. There's no question. And, as far as, they already have a quarterback coach, and they're going to have an offensive coordinator that's going to call the play, that is going to call the plays. So I'm not sure if, kind of what you're asking there. But, I think Muschamp's going to make the best possible hire for the position. I don't doubt that. Like we mentioned earlier, I think he knows just how important this hire is. Another one from Reddit, Gamecock 21. Do you think Jake's recent decline from his first season is based on teams having tape on him, or was he not properly developed by coaching staff enough? Tyler, I'll let you start with that one.
That's a good question. I'd probably go with the second part of that, where it's just not properly developing. It's so hard to look at and say, what was different from year 1 to year 2, because it looked like the same exact quarterback. You'd have to say it's development. I don't think he's a bad quarterback, and I don't think there was something that teams saw on tape where they're just like, oh man, we figured him out. There it is. I would assume it's development. I saw a lot this week about, having Bobby Bentley at quarterbacks coach and having somebody, that could actually coach him. Because I think Kurt Roper was the quarterbacks coach or acting quarterbacks coach. Is that right?
Yeah, that was right.
Yeah, so I think that might have something to do with it. The good thing about Kurt Roper being gone, you could see whether we'll definitely know next year whether or not Kurt Roper is horrible or Jake Bentley's horrible. I feel like that's going to be a huge factor.
Yeah, no, for sure. I definitely think, I definitely think it was the development. I mean, I just think you look at Jake Bentley in his first season and the limited time that he had. What you saw in his first season was a guy that had talent, was raw, obviously very young, but wasn't thinking a whole lot. I feel like he just kind of went out there and played. I don't really think he was going through progressions or was trying to manage, all of the playbook or whatever. It was just a guy kind of out there, a talented kid, obviously really raw, but is making plays. I mean, I think the Tennessee, it just looked like a kid just playing football. I thought at times this year, I don't know if it was because the coaching staff put too much on him or he was thinking too much and put too much pressure on himself, but it just looked like at times he got in his own head. And, I definitely think it's on the coaching staff when you have a kid this young. What is he, 19 years old? I mean, you bring a kid in, and it's your job to mold him into, what's going to best fit your offense, how to make him the best possible quarterback he can be. And yeah, I agree with you. I don't know that Kurt Roper. I don't think Kurt Roper and staff really did that. So like you said, I mean, next year is going to tell us a lot. I mean, you kind of get a whole off season of a new offensive scheme, new lingo, and you're really going to find out how good Jake Bentley is next year for sure. So I think it'll be very, very interesting to kind of see that progression. With that being said, we're pretty much going to wrap it up. I know we've got, Tyler, some other tidbits as far as Gamecock basketball. I know you're the Gamecock basketball guru, but I've been watching a little bit here and there. South Carolina just got the win over Limestone the other day, like a 30-point win, I think, in a game which they definitely struggled early. I was watching that one.
Oh, yeah.
Rallied. I think they went on like a 20-2 run in the first half and then kind of never looked back. But overall, I think they finished 9-3 out of conference or so. Had a really horrific loss at Clemson, which they lost by like 20. So we won't dive into that one too much. But just been a team that's been very, very sporadic, very kind of up and down. Had a last second win over Coastal Carolina a couple weeks ago. So, definitely the losses of Sindarius Thornwell, Dwayne Notice, PJ Dozier, they're definitely noticeable, no pun intended. But South Carolina opens conference play on New Year's Eve at Ole Miss. Tyler, just from what you've seen, thus far, I know that we were both talking and we really haven't had a chance to watch too many of the games. But just from the limited action you've seen thus far, what are your feelings for South Carolina basketball, heading into conference play?
I've had – you said what I've seen. I've seen literally 0 minutes of South Carolina basketball this year. It's either been listening to it on the radio on the way somewhere. I've been so busy, or just reading about the game afterwards. But it seems like teams really struggling because they're playing so many young guys and guys that haven't played, and they're struggling for an identity right now. Chris Silva's been really good. I know Limestone he got into foul trouble super early, and I think South Carolina's down several points midway through the first quarter when I was listening to it, and then they went on a 22 run to close the half, and really never looked back after that. Frank Booker has been a tremendous asset because he shoots unbelievable. What South Carolina could have done last year, having a guy like that in the postseason, because that would have been unbelievable. But he doesn't really do anything other than shoot threes or anything on the defensive end or driving to the basket or anything like that. So you have a niche player there. Just other guys, Kotsar and Silva, I feel like have held their own. But then you look at 2 guard spots and small forward, and you're trying to figure out who could play and who can't. And just super young. I feel like this team's going to have to be patient going through conference season.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've obviously had limited time watching as well, but I know the games that I've watched where Clemson and early against Limestone, where they've the one thing I said on Twitter, on my personal Twitter account, is that the bad thing about being a team that relies on the 3-point shot is when you can't make it, it's really, really ugly. And when South Carolina, like against Clemson, when they got blown out, they could not make the 3-point shot. And a lot of times I think they're settling for the 3-pointer instead of going inside. So, I think it's going to be interesting in conference play. They're going to have to find a way, like you said, to get more production out of their guards. Hassani Gravitt, I think it hurts. Obviously, we learned today that Rakeem Felder will be back in school in January, but will not play this season. Frank Martin made that announcement today. So that one definitely hurts. You had, God, what is his name? Just slipped my mind. Had hamstring problems all season. Who am I talking about?
No, I can't think of his name. Corey Holden.
Corey Holden. Yeah, Corey Holden has been, lingering injuries all year long. Is a guy they could definitely use. So, for this young team, like I said, they're extremely young. I think it's going to be kind of a rocky road in conference play, but they, you never know. I didn't really know what to expect from them last year either. Kind of showed out, but there's going to be somebody step up and kind of be the go-to guy. Like you said, Silva's had a good showing thus far. Frank Booker's a pretty good player, but I think they just got to be more consistent shooting the basketball. I think that's the biggest thing. So like I said, the Gamecocks open conference play at Ole Miss. So it should be a fun ride. So we'll see what happens. Baseball season will be coming up soon as well. Obviously, we're not going to jump into that until probably late January, early February. But, with that being said, also, one thing we didn't mention, Hayden Hurst did declare for the NFL draft, as we all know. So this will be his last game as a Gamecock. We wish him nothing but the best. Besides that, I think that's about it. Tyler, do you have anything that I missed? Or obviously there was a ton of stuff to cover the last month, but any last words or anything we might have missed?
I think we got everything, to be honest.
All right, perfect. Well, obviously, if you're going down to Tampa, have fun. If you're not, be sure to tune in ESPN 2, noon Eastern kick again from Tampa, Florida. The Gamecocks take on the Michigan Wolverines in the 2018 Outback Bowl. We'll be back next week to recap the game, go through everything, talk about what happened. Until then, we appreciate you guys listening. As always, I'm Chris Phillips. He's Tyler Clark. We appreciate you guys listening. We'll catch you next time.